Now that you have a good idea of what is involved in network security, let us begin. So what we will start out is with the Internet Protocol Stack as a reference, as indicated here. So we will look at attacks at different layers of the protocol stack, as well as what are the solutions that help prevent these attacks. After we finish this, we will also cover other material in the form of firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and network protocols that have been designed from scratch with security in mind. In this video, we will cover attacks at these two layers, physical and link layer. So again, to refresh, what is the role of the physical layer? Right, the role of the physical layer is to encode the bits that the higher layers give into signals. These signals could be voltage levels. And similarly, the role of the link layer is to ensure next hop delivery. So this is A and B are considered to be neighbors. What neighbors means we will cover shortly. So link layer's job is to ensure that if A has a packet to send to B, it will take care of whatever is needed to send that packet to B. So this will include things like how to frame the packet, if there are errors, how to detect and correct the errors. If this I'm showing as a point-to-point link, but this can be a shared link, in which case it will talk about how to get access to this shared media, how to do switching if there are many neighbors to this particular node. So before we dig into the attacks, there are certain things you need to know. So let me get started with that. Again, this will be a brief overview. It is expected that you know these things in detail. So this link layer switching is based on star topology. Many people, when they talk about Ethernet, for example, assume that this is the topology under consideration. This is a bus topology. All these nodes are sharing this wire, which is the Ethernet media. That is why when earlier also I was mentioning about neighbors. So if this is A, B, C, D, all these are neighbors of A. So when it sends a packet, this packet can reach any of them over the bus. Only the relevant destination will pick up that packet and pass it up. But this is an outdated concept. The Ethernet LANs don't operate in bus mode anymore. They operate in a star mode where you have something called a switch and the hosts A, B, C, D are connected to the switch. This switch in turn can connect to another switch which may be connected to some other host C. Even in this case, C is a neighbor of A because this is still at the link layer. So in this mode of star topology, that CSMA CD, which you must have studied as part of your undergrad, has no role to play because the media is not shared here. The CSMA CD works here but not here because these are point-to-point links that S has with respect to A. So there is no contention. There are two wires from A to S as well as S to A. Given that this is the topology, naturally when A has to send a packet to C, you have to handle forwarding. So let's see how this forwarding is done at the link layer. So whenever we talk about forwarding, you need identities to identify the source and the destination. At the link layer, the MAC addresses are the ones that identify this. So for example, when host A wants to send a packet, at the link layer, there will be a link layer header. There may be many fields in the header, but the ones that are of relevance here are the source MAC and the destination MAC. So here if A is trying to send a packet to say let's B, A will put source as A, destination as B. These are MAC addresses. Now this packet is received by the switch, which is also called bridge, and this has to figure out how to send this packet. Ideally, you want this packet sent on this interface and not on this interface because that is where host C is, host B is here. So one way to do this is to do manual configuration. So whenever any hosts are connected to this particular switch, you manually configure, okay, if you want to reach B, use port 2, you want to reach host C, use port 1. But these bridges themselves will be connected to another bridges, some other bridges, and somewhere here host D may be sitting, in which case this also how to reach you have to configure here. All this turns out to be very tedious and a system administrator's nightmare. So what is often done is you want an automatic configuration. Can you think of a very naive scheme of forwarding? It should be very naive, nothing sophisticated. Well, the simplest scheme is the following, where you forward on all interfaces except the one on which you received. So for example, if this is represented here, so A is connected here, B is connected here, C is connected here for this particular switch. This is the in port. I am representing the out port by 0. What this means is this line and this line actually represent this line, where through this line the switch is receiving packets from A, and through this line it is sending packets to A. So similarly, this is, let's say, port 1 is for C, and port 2 is for B. So the idea here of this automatic simple strategy is if some packets comes here from A, forward it on these two ports. So C will also receive it. It will note that the destination is B, so it will just drop the packet, whereas B will process that particular packet. So that is what is happening. But as you can see, this is not very efficient. It leads to too much traffic in the network. By the way, this network of interconnection of all these bridges with lots of hosts is called a local area network. Okay, LAN. So this is where link layer plays a role. The point being that all the nodes that are part of this LAN are neighbors, and the link layer will provide this next hop neighbor delivery. So since this is not efficient way of forwarding, so this is how you can do forwarding in a more efficient fashion. Before that, let me tell a few things. What is shown here is what is called an extended LAN. What it means is, in this extended LAN, all these nodes are neighbors as far as the link layer is concerned. So one can imagine that this is equivalent to a single bus where all these nodes are there, A, B, C, D, E, F, so on. This is the equivalence, but notice I put 2 stars. That means there are differences also. We will get to the differences shortly after I explain what these learning bridges are. So how do you do better forwarding? Suppose A has a packet that it wants to send to D. So source will be A, destination will be D. Now this packet is received by bridge 1 on port 0. It doesn't know where D is, so because it doesn't know, it tends to send it out on all of its interfaces. But when the bridge 1 sees this packet, it knows that because the source is A is in this direction, so it will make a note in a table saying to reach host A. In other words, if someone were to send a frame where the destination is A, I need to send it out on port 0. That is what it will maintain. That is bridge 1. Let's now look at bridge 2. Bridge 2 is receiving this packet. Let's say bridge has this as port 1, this as port 2, and so on. So bridge 2 will also make a note saying to reach A, I have to send it out on port 1. That means I have to send it out in this direction towards bridge 1, because that is where I am receiving packets from A. And similarly, once this comes to bridge 3, let's say if this is port 0, bridge 3 will also make a note that to reach A, I have to send it out on port Z, because this is the direction, port 0, because this is the direction you take to go back to A. So this is the learning process that these learning bridges do, and thereby they will forward the packets correctly. Note that such entries in this table are purged after some period unless they are refreshed. Why do you think this is the case? Well, it may be that F may move from here to some other bridge. So you don't want this to remember forever, because if F moved to some other place, then it won't receive any packets because you will keep forwarding it in this direction. So to avoid that, you need to time out these values. Okay, now going back to these differences, the star I was mentioning. So there are 2 things to note. One is a unicast packet. So this which I have given is an example of a unicast packet. A unicast packet, if the learning is proper, will be received only by the destination, which is D in this particular case. All the other nodes will not receive the packet because these bridges know to direct it on the right port. So it will come like this. This will go on this port, and once it reaches the bridge, it will come on this direction, and this knows that D is on this port, so it will send it out on the right port. So F, E, C, B will not see that particular packet. So that is something to note with respect to star topology. Whereas in bus topology, if A were to send a unicast packet, all of them will receive it. That is, the network interfaces will receive it, except that they may choose not to process it because it is destined for D and not to them. But if you put something in promiscuous mode here, you can potentially look at all these packets as well. So that is one thing to note. The other is the broadcast. If A were to send a broadcast packet where the destination is a broadcast address, typically FFFF is the broadcast address, all ones. This broadcast packet, the bridges know to send it out on all interfaces. So this broadcast packet will be received by all the nodes in a star topology as well as a bus topology. So these are some things to keep in mind. So the same explanation, I am just noting it down as an algorithm at a bridge. So if a frame was received at a bridge for destination D on a given port P, so that is, this is the bridge. So this is port P. On this, it received a packet with some source. We don't care what the source is. The destination is D. And it came on this port P. Now there is no entry for D in the table. Then you have to forward it out on all your interfaces because you don't know where D is. But if there is an entry for D in the forwarding table corresponding to P, in other words, it says to reach D, use port P. That means you don't have to do anything because it came on that port. So this often is the case where there is some other bridge that has sent it out on this interface. But to reach B, you in fact have to send it on that particular bridge. That bridge must have already taken care of forwarding it in the right direction. So you don't have to do anything for that. And if entry for D in forwarding table corresponding to I not equal to P, then forward it on I. So if it says D is on some port 1, send it out on port 1. That is what this is telling. So this algorithm is useful to understand because some of the attacks leverage this algorithm. So keep this algorithm in mind. So we are done with some background that is needed to understand the various attacks that happen at the link layer. So let's start looking at these attacks.